Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Force4Good Podcast. I'm Dennis Brooks, a Senior Superintendent of Police here with the Jamaica Constabulary Force. And in this conversation, I have the pleasure of speaking with Superintendent Kerry-Ann Bailey of the Center for Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse. Now, these are going to be conversations that we will have that tackle some of the critical issues of modern policing. It's so important for us to have these conversations, and we hope that they will benefit you and help you to understand what's happening here in your police force. Superintendent Bailey, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
CISOCA is one of those entities that you carry a significant weight as investigators. We are policing in the digital age. More of our lives are being lived in the digital spaces, on digital platforms. First of all, from your perspective, tell us how that impacts policing from a CISOCA perspective.
From a CISOCA perspective, we have recognized that more and more persons are flocking to social media and various platforms for a number of reasons. To develop friendships, to share their lives, to meet people. And we have noticed a trend, increase in persons using TikTok, for example. Instagram are the two main ones that they do use. So we find that a lot of the reports that come in generate from meeting people via one of those social media platforms. And so children go on as well because they're not being monitored sometimes, and adults tend to go on to find dates. So we are in an era where persons are utilizing this for dating purposes, for long-term relationships. So persons are capitalizing on it, and while these technologies were developed for good, in the main part, we realize that a lot of perpetrators out there that are using it for their own benefit, which is negatively impacting the society.
We've seen numbers as high as 22% of offense cases that begin with an online introduction. What is it about these digital platforms that are so potentially dangerous?
I believe that most of the users are not thinking beyond what it is that they are intending it to be used for. So, for example, persons will go on to share their lives. More and more we see people want us to see what's happening with them. People want to put themselves out there, especially if they think they have a skill or a talent. So people come and dance, they'll share ideas. They have a lot of followings. It is also income generating for a number of persons. So they go on with that intention. But as I indicated before, there are perpetrators lurking out there who are looking for an opportunity to weasel people out of their money sometimes. But as it relates to from a CISOCA perspective, they are targeting these persons for sexual exploits. So when a person posts a video or posts videos about their lives, there's someone looking on to look at physical features that may appeal to them. They understand how they operate and where to target. And so the more they post, the more they share, they're opening up themselves and their lives to perpetrators out there.
Immediately, of course, I know persons watching, if you're a parent, you're concerned that your child is on a social media platform unsupervised, unregulated. You don't know who is speaking to them because in many instances, the person that they think they're talking to is not actually the person that they're talking to. There's the reality of catfishing, for example. Is there any advice based on the cases that you have seen that you would offer to parents of children who are beginning to become interested in themselves being on the platforms?
Supervision is key, but we find that where supervision is concerned, most of the parental controls are used for toddlers and not necessarily for teenagers, where the bulk of the reports are coming from. So we probably feel that our teenagers are more responsible, but they are also more vulnerable. And for the children, we may look at things like TikTok or Instagram, where they're mostly adult content. So you may ban them from that, or you may remove that from their devices. However, you have things like Roblox. That's a popular game that is being used by a lot of children. When they interact on games like that, you don't know who is talking to them. And as I said before, persons are lurking there. They ask them questions there. If you monitor your children, we've had reports where persons ask inappropriate questions there. It's not just about the game anymore. So if it's not being monitored properly, you find that your child might be out there sharing personal information about your family that you would not expect them to do because you're thinking that they're actually in a game. But the actual monitoring and utilizing the instrument for parental control is good for all ages once they're children. That will help us preventing some of the perpetrators from getting to them.
And so we would encourage persons to explore the various parental controls that are available on the tablets, whether it's an iOS or an Android device,
Yes.
and the monitoring protocols that are available so that you can know what is there. I know that some of it is individual and parenting style is going to factor in, but would you suggest that, you know, parents maintain access to the device, for instance?
I would suggest that because, you know, in some cases you find that children become secretive. Once they start getting on and having adult conversations that they should not be having, they tend to hide that. They're more shared with their friends. So if you are not able to see or check the browser history to know, you know, what sites they have been on, what they have been doing, we may find that we've lost them to persons outside of family, outside of control. And that's where, you know, the perpetrators will weasel their way in.
Do we find that there is a greater presentation of certain offenses in urban centers or versus rural in certain parishes? For instance, you would expect high internet penetration in Kingston and St. Andrew and St. Catherine, so you'd see numbers there that might be greater than, for instance, the numbers that you would see in St. Elizabeth. But is that the case, that when we look at cases that especially that have an ethos online, do we see a difference in divisions and parishes?
Not really, you know, because the social media space is one of those things that go right across parishes. So people are online, and that's how we connect across parishes too. So you find that when you go on social media, that's where they understand. The persons in the western end of the island will know what's happening in the eastern end, the central area, and so on. So it happens right across, and we meet people across geographical spaces. So especially for meeting for dating purposes and so on, people, a lot of persons want to meet persons outside of the country if you're in the country. You know, they want to meet persons from Kingston and so on, and, you know, the introductions are made there. But the genuineness of those conversations is where we have the problem.
And if we look at it based on gender, are we seeing boys any safer than girls, for instance, or boys under threat equally or similarly? Maybe not equally, but similarly.
Boys are under threat less based on the reports that we are getting. The reports indicate that more females are being pursued by these perpetrators more than boys.
But boys are still featuring in the numbers.
Being featured.
Let's shift the conversation a little bit to another matter that I think is very important, and that is as it relates to teen pregnancy. Generally speaking, what are we seeing in terms of the numbers today or in recent times?
So we have seen a decline in teen pregnancies, but it's still enough for us to be concerned. The teenage pregnancies usually range between the ages of 12 and 16. And at that time, when the pregnancies, are being, what do I say now? Many parents are not aware that their children are involved in sexual activities, and it is when they become pregnant that they find out that some things are happening. And some of these pregnancies stem from boyfriend-girlfriend relationships within schools and communities, while others stem from sexual offenses perpetrated against them by older family members or other persons they may not have known.
Let's look at the latter. And let's look at the numbers. What are we seeing in relation to pregnancies that emanate from sexual offenses not, boyfriend, girlfriend situations?
Not boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yes.
So outside of boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, we are seeing a number of the pregnancies coming from family members and sexual intercourse, as I say, among teenagers. So a high volume of them have to do with children at school. So a lot of children within the classroom, they form relationships, and it is something that they look forward to. It is something that is prevalent in schools, They're excited to say, I have a boyfriend, I have a girlfriend. And then because it is something that is frowned upon by authority, they hide
Yes.
to do the sexual exploit. So they'll wait until after school, behind some classrooms or any opportunity that they get to get away from the eyes of either parents or school authority. That's when these things usually happen.
Of course, we have to maintain stakeholder relationships. CISOCA is unique in its stakeholder relationships because you have to keep your stakeholders very close.
Yes.
So much so that many of the CISOCA offices, or most of the CISOCA offices, are one-stop shops. Tell us a little bit about the dynamics of how you work with stakeholders, healthcare professionals, and others.
So our main partner, especially as it relates to children, is the CPFSA. So once there's a report where a child is involved, they're also our first point of contact, and they get involved once the reports are made. They are part of the interviewing process of children, and they keep the record with their children registry. We also refer them for counseling through the counseling arm of the Ministry of Justice. And that's for all reports of sexual offenses that come to us. Persons are automatically referred for counseling intervention. We work closely as well with the hospitals because they're a big part of the examination that will form a part of the package that goes to the courts and as evidence. The Victoria Jubilee Hospital is where we refer our pregnant teens. And if it is that they turn up there without coming to us first, they will be referred because they are by law required to inform CISOCA, and it goes also for the private doctors. So if the parents choose to take them privately, they are also required to send them to us. If they come to us first, once we have treated with them, they will be given the referral to take there. So once they go and present the referral, then they will be treated with. So they go there for the antenatal care. So they'll get that kind of care. We also work with the Children's Hospital for extremely young children, and depending on the violent nature of the case, they'll be sent there instead of the regular hospitals. So those are our main partners, but again, we partner with schools, we partner with communities, we partner with the divisions and other non-governmental organizations that do this kind of intervention work, and to enhance the cause of what we are going to decrease prevalence of offenses of sexual nature.
You mentioned something that I think is important for us to explore, which is when a pregnancy develops from a sexual offense. And so it might be that it's a referral, and for some people in communities, there is a moral dilemma for them because there is a baby father who is a sexual predator possibly, or there is a baby father who by definition, there's a young man who has committed a crime, but if you report it, then you are committing this young girl to a life potentially where there is no father in the child's life. And so it poses a challenge for you to then investigate. How much of a challenge is it to collect statements and, explore the various points to prove when it relates to pursuing a sexual offense investigation where there is some amount of resistance?
It is indeed a challenge because once a pregnant teen is taken to us, if she refuses to speak to us about who the child's father is or could be, then we have a problem there. So many of them who come in understand that fact that you just explained. So they'll know if it's an adult, we will get information if it's another child. So if it is that two 15-year-olds had sex and the female became pregnant, she will tell us because we know it's another minor. So the penalties are different, the interventions are different.
Right.
Once it's an adult, she's aware that the person will be charged, arrested and charged, brought before the court, and likely to be incarcerated as a result. The community and possibly members of her own family may want to influence what is shared with us because of the expectation that he'll be incarcerated as a result of it.
Yes.
So they hide it for as long as they can. Prodding from us, yes. Through the counseling and the intervention from CPFSA, many times we do get the results, but there are the few times that we still don't know. And let us say the child is 16. By the next year, she becomes 17 and 18, then she can determine that, you know, she no longer wants to pursue the case and give a statement in that regard. Communities also do not want to stigmatize their communities as having sexual predators.
Right.
And if the predator or the perpetrator is close to the family too, they also look at that. So you're right in saying it's a dilemma based on the closeness, based on who they see this person as, especially if that person is someone upstanding in the community or was known to be an upstanding person in the community, and this now puts them in disbelief. Some people genuinely don't believe it because of who the person is identified to be.
Right.
And so the child becomes now the liar, the storyteller, the outcast because of who the perpetrator is.
Let's then explore a very difficult challenge that you face in investigating matters, because invariably in Jamaica, many of the victims of sexual offenses, they fall victim because someone breached trust. How prevalent is it that it is in someone in a position of trust, in a yard adjacent, in a room adjacent, in a relationship adjacent? How prevalent is it that persons who you trusted your child to be around, that is the person who committed the sexual offense?
It's unfortunate that many of the cases that we get are as a result of breach of trust. And this is from as community members, as you've indicated, as also family members. And this is not only a challenge for us as investigators, because the family members tend to want to hide this because this is now family shame. It goes back to my previous response to it's something that you hide because it might have been a pastor in the family. It might have been a teacher. It's somebody that is expected to know better and to do better. So when this is revealed, they tend to cover it up, hide it, because they don't want it to be known. They don't want it to impact careers. They don't want it to impact social standing. And again, even the family members themselves just don't believe the child in a lot of the cases. In families too, especially when the perpetrators are stepfathers and uncles and persons who provide financially for the family, that's where we find a lot of the problems too, because if you encourage the child to report it, then you'll be cut off. You may have to pack up and move, then you have to consider, you have to weigh the consequences. Now, if we just hush this up and I start paying more attention to her, then I will be in control of it. But if we pack up and leave and report it, where will I go? You know, what will happen to us in the long run? He'll cut us off. There's a fear factor too. It depends if it is someone with a criminal background done in the community, you know not to speak. You know, you're encouraged not to speak because you understand the possible implications coming from a criminal standpoint. So for the victim, who is the child, the psychological impact on the child plus the physical state of being pregnant, dropping out of school, dealing with knowing that you can't share even if you want to, you have to keep it quiet. It also impacts if you are a church member, because now you don't want your church members to know that you were having sex in the first place, you know, let alone become pregnant, you know. So it's the weight is heavy on the child, but how the family deals with it is also dependent on the factors that I shared and how we move forward.
How do we, if we do, how do we assist in managing that psychological trauma and helping them through it?
Okay. So CPFSA plays a great role where that is concerned as it relates to the intervention, psychological intervention, the follow through where that is concerned. And so that child, so we will take on the investigative aspects and ensure that we bring the perpetrator to justice. However, the psychological mental care going forward, we have the counseling services that carry them through until they are in a better position to face society. Also, for those who will have to leave school because of their physical state or because they can't mentally handle it, we also partner with the Women's Center who, provide that opportunity for them to go while pregnant and even after to further their education and develop other skills that will prepare them for life.
Now, somewhere in the region of 48% of pregnancies or sexual intercourse cases with a person under the age of 16 is actually a boyfriend. So there is not a predatory relationship. How do we treat with those matters? Because these are two teens in love, so to speak, a Romeo and a Juliet. Some of the times it is a case of a person getting caught, and then now an angry father wants to go after this young boy. And the young boy is in my picnic too. How do we, as CISOCA, manage those kinds of cases?
Right, so the sexual intercourse with person under 16 is twofold. You have among children and where the male is an adult. So we find that 48% would represent the whole. So yes, you are correct. So mostly it's the parents who find out about these relationships and take their children there because they want us to do something about it. And we will do something about it and start the investigation. Where the adults are concerned, it is the power, authority, the control, because as the adult male, you have a certain amount of control over the young female child. And for the child, you find that they feel good going to school to check, my boyfriend is 19, I have a 20-year-old boyfriend, he can drive and pick me up at school and take me to KFC or take me out or drop me home and that kind of thing. And all this sometimes is happening without the knowledge of the parents. Unfortunately, though, sometimes the parents are aware. Because they too are benefiting at times from these relationships. So sometimes some things are allowed and the child is a willing participant. However, there are also times when the child is not necessarily in it, but because of that control, that authoritative nature of this predator or this perpetrator, they feel compelled. They don't have the willpower to fend this person off based on their what it is that they are requiring of them. And then, as we indicated before, among the children, it is something to be excited about, especially if the guy is on the Manning Cup team or if he's running a champs and that kind of thing. It's a proud thing. If the female is the beautiful ones, probably you have seen the trends on social media too. They go around schools and asking, who is the most beautiful girl on the fifth form block? I don't know if you've seen it. And then some of the boys will just, they'll call names and so on. So they look forward to these things. My girlfriend is the prettiest girl in the school, or she's one of the cheerleaders, or, there's something, so it's something to brag about when you are associated with a particular person.
So what would you say to the parents who are trying to educate their boys as well as their girls about these kinds of relationships?
Have frank conversations with your children. Not all will listen, but you've planted the seed. Let your male child know that you have to respect yourself and you have to respect the females. So respect, you start with yourself. Respect yourself enough to know that these are some of the things I will not do or should not do. I must abide by rules and regulation. Empower them with what the law says, you know, what is right, what is wrong, basic foundation. Send the children to church, you know, those basic rules of do unto others, of respecting people. And so it starts from there. We are always told the foundation, school, home, community, you know, those are the things that instill in us the characteristics that we should have. Talk to your girls. Fathers, be there for your girls. Take them out on dates. Let them know what is it, what should be expected, how a man should treat a woman, how they should be treated, the expectation. Not to get excited because somebody can drop them off in a car just down the road or take them to KFC.
Yes.
You understand? It's not always about, let them know it's not always about the material things in life. You know, have that frank conversation. Start it right there and be involved in school. Know when your child should be staying late at school and when they should be coming right home. Monitor them. Know the clubs that they are part of, the friends that they are keeping, where they are sleeping over if you allow it, when not to allow it, you know. Know the parents of your children's friend. Get involved in their everyday life. So I'd start from there and then monitoring once you've laid the foundation.
Superintendent Bailey, such a great conversation. We're out of time, but definitely we will continue this conversation in part 2. My guest has been Superintendent Kerry-Ann Bailey, the head of the Center for Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse. Stay with us. Part 2 will come next week. But until next time, I'm Dennis Brooks for the Force for Good podcast.